Though the discussions on this podcast might be mystic, the language can be anything but holy. On this episode, I am continuing the story of my greatest failure. So, if you're still on that resolution diet looking for the keto versions of my favorite casseroles, this is probably not your episode. However, if you are resonating with part 1 and ready for part 2 of this story about old things being made new, refill your cup of kindness and let's toast, my friends. Hey y'all, I'm Grace, and this is Mediocre Mystic, the podcast where we explore how mediocre makes the world go round and how mediocre works in mysterious ways. Thanks so much for tuning in. I shared my coming out story for Pride on the Season 3, Episode 9, Y'all Means All. On this episode, I'm going to go more specifically into part 2 of my epic failure of ordination. The first time, it turned out being a woman disqualified me. This time, it turned out being a woman who loves a woman would disqualify me. This whole show, it would seem, is a flashback. So, here we go. After the rejection to enter ministry based on my gender, I tried a couple of ministry-related jobs that did not work out. Some due to lack of funds, some due to it just not being a good fit. I had mixed experiences in these positions, and I was burned out and wanted some sense of normalcy and of stability, at least for a little while. So I entered into the professional workforce. Ironically, that good old boy club of religion and public service parentage networks, since my dad was a fireman and a Baptist, would garner me my first job in the law. For a time, it offered me solace and rest and a life of routine and comfort. It was actually good for me to spend more time in the real world and less time in the church. However, most likely this was not true for those I encountered, as I was a nuisance of evangelical proselytizing. My father used to say, "I am a Christian, disguised as a fireman." I was always a bit unsettled by this. I was also unsettled by this approach in ministries I volunteered for. I found it somewhat deceitful. And yet, here I was, implementing this tactic as a legal assistant. I just did not know what else to do. A part of me thought, okay, this is it. This is what you have been training for, to be in the field and harvest these lost souls as a soldier in the army of the Lord. That diminished over time as I realized I liked these people better. These worldly, unsaved, heathen people. In particular, a lesbian couple I got to know and pet sit for that seemed far more kind and loving than any Christian playing another part in life I had ever met. I knew I was like them. A couple of times they endured my questions about their own coming out patiently. Working for this law firm, with a strong conservative Christian bent and the leadership, got increasingly uncomfortable. They judged these women who did solid work for them. These women whom I knew to be amazing people who took care of each other, a pack of animals, their friends, and for one of them, a very sick mother they both took care of. Their home was full of love. It was comfortable to me in a way I had never experienced before. I did not see any reason they needed the gospel to be good. It never occurred to me that would even be a possibility. Yet, here I saw all the so-called fruits of the Spirit at work in these so-called lost, abominable souls. Little did I know I was a universal spiritual lesbian disguised as a straight Christian woman. So I left all church life for a time and tried to just settle in on my relationship with God. I did not even know what in the hell that would look like without some older white dude telling me. I worked hard and attended all kinds of classes and meetings to explore things I never thought I would. I went to movies and music shows. I hung out with friends and discussed the meaning of life. I did really bad art and got drunk with my best friend. I still felt a pull in my soul, something I could not deny. So I sat in my bedroom on a sunny afternoon, believe it or not, in March, and I meditated. I asked for a vision. I wanted so much to understand. Far beyond belief, I wanted to understand. I've always been a bit of a Renaissance woman with my hands in many pots. This had always frustrated me. I had heard from others, and I also felt myself, that I knew a lot about a lot of things. But I also knew people who were amazing at their craft. They knew music inside and out. They knew art inside and out. They knew the law inside and out. Hell, some even knew beer inside and out. However, I never felt like I knew anything really well, except that one thing. God. Oh, dear God. After a while in this meditation, this vision quest as it were, on bad mauve carpet, surrounded by terrible fruitwood furniture and country pink and blue paint, I saw a ring. Inside this ring was all of my Renaissance woman loves. I interpreted this ring as the collar a priest wears. Sometimes in Orthodox circles, it is referred to as a dog collar. I thought, okay, a place I could use all of these things. Maybe I was supposed to give this ordination thing another go. Still, I went to bed that night with more questions than answers. Before I stepped out into a whole new denominational plane, I went back to what I knew. I tried to re-enter the seeker-sensitive megachurch that I had had an on-again and off-again relationship with. One of the sermons I heard back in that stadium-seated cinema-like space with my latte in hand was how gay folks do not want to do the work. That must be why we choose each other, because obviously all women and men are a binary monolith. We are all alike in our respective two genders only. So the gays do not want to partner with another gender because that is too hard. Of course, there was no room for our beautiful bi, two-spirited, non-binary, or transhuman kind. Uh-oh. Did I ever make the backslide, as we say? Normally in religion, that would mean out of the church and into the world. In my case, it was the other way around. I was regressing back into the oppressive teaching because the church is a powerful, addictive drug. It can lure you into a false sense of belonging and certainty as long as you obey, as long as you conform. I listened to this sermon and a testimony by a man you may recognize who started and has now left the Exodus ministry. I bought the damn CD, y'all. Ugh. I was already trying to pray my gay away, just the way I had regretfully done with and for others before this moment. I sat down with the pastor of this megachurch with massive influence in my city, whom I had known for many years before he was all of this in a bag of chips, to share some concerns I had in a few areas. As you can imagine, we did not see eye to eye on a great many things. And he literally said to me, "You don't like it here? Go elsewhere." He thought himself too big to fail. And at that point, I took this collar image pretty literally. I had nothing else to hold on to. So I did what any good Enneagram 5 does, and I Googled the shit out of my town for progressive Orthodox churches. I had actually been to this church years before, just one time with my dad. They had a woman on staff. What could go wrong? Only every damn thing. Years before I entered a suburban liturgical church with black and white spectator Doc Martens, I had studied my scriptures and all of the so-called clobber passages. I knew what Jesus had to say on this matter was literally. A person who would become one of my closest friends for a time confessed later, "I wondered what in the hell someone like you was doing here." I saw another woman, the associate priest in fact, standing up in front as a minister, offering communion. So in my mind, I was good to go, right? To be fair, I was not completely out to myself. I had that inkling in the back of my mind, but I thought this denomination to be a progressive one with traditional church services. I had been raised to believe anything liberal was evil. I mean, do not pass go in Monopoly evil, do not collect $200 straight to jail, equal hell, evil. But I thought I could make it here, in the, what I considered, in between. Spoiler alert, it would not turn out to be so. It was made clear to me that just because women got a pass, that was the only thing that was not conservative about this congregation. Ironically, it was the female associate priest who laid down this law with me. But by then, I was already in, so any inkling I had went right back into erasure. I once again put on my straight Christian woman disguise over my growing universal spiritual lesbian true self. I worked closely with this associate pastor as I pursued ordination. I grew very close to both of the pastors and several families. Some are cherished, chosen family today, whom I adore and who love me and my wife dearly. The thing was, I did not realize that the lead pastor, a man that I thought was my ally, would turn out to be my judge. There was much turmoil amongst the leadership with the female associate pastor. It had also created a rift among the congregation. I felt like I was on the fucking rack, stretched between people I loved deeply. After the associate pastor left, my whole ordination process was halted, and then restarted. I saw people who had come into the process years after me, with less education, all of a sudden being put ahead of me. When the pastor found the time to meet with me, I was constantly challenged with questions, and when I challenged back, I was shut down. It began to feel personal. So I began to distance myself and seek out other opportunities, since it seemed this was going to be a very long process. In doing so, I had started to pursue other avenues of healing arts as my ministry. One was massage therapy. In that schooling, you trade with partners to learn your craft. I was in session one day with a woman I had befriended, and whom I knew to be part of the LGBTQIA+ community herself. She became a very close friend, and this day we were working together, and she opened my throat chakra. I felt like I was going to choke. I kept praying for the Holy Spirit to come in my mind, and she said, "Did you call the Spirit?" I said, "Yes." And then I cried like a baby. Finally, I said, "I'm gay." That was my confession. She heard it, and she honored it as the sweet thing it was. It was incredibly spiritual, which turned everything I had been taught upside down. I remember driving home and looking in the mirror and saying it out loud to myself. The difficulty of coming out is often discussed, but it must be said that the hardest person to come out to is yourself. I told my best friend, who had been on this journey of exploration with me for a long while, supporting me all the way. I also told the one family whom I knew was my chosen family beyond church. Otherwise, I kept this to myself, as the church was involved in a shit show of denominational splitting on the topic of LGBTQIA+ ordination. The first gay bishop had to wear a bulletproof vest to his investiture. The now archbishop, who married a certain royal couple, even came to my church to plead the case for my congregation to stay in the denomination. He was the most humble and peaceful man I have ever had the privilege to hold space with. Shortly after his visit, the split did happen, and I knew I was on my way out. The lead pastor left with a coalition of others who chose the hate of one group upon which to build their community. It was staggering for me to watch him assume the role of some sort of martyr. I began attending a different church, whilst still trying to maintain my relationships with the former church. This was a small, artsy church that was a coffee shop during non-church hours. I had actually attended off and on for many years. I got more involved than ever for a short time, as it too belonged to another progressive denomination. To my chagrin, I was caught off guard having a coffee after music practice with the pastor when we began to speak of my previous experience. I did not come out to him personally, but just discussed the situation with the denomination. He then proceeded to tell me how disgusted he was with his own denomination for the very same fight I had just been through. His mother was part of a group that prayed away the gay as its mission. I had been lured in by the cool kid presentation. But honestly, I loved this place. The members were incredibly down to earth, welcoming, and also so gifted with all forms of art. I was utterly disheartened. Again. But this time, I did not stay, and I did not maintain that relationship. But it would not be the last time I saw that pastor. Oddly enough to me, the lead pastor of my former church was hurt by my attendance at the coffee house church, even though he had all but ignored me for some time now. By this time, of course, I had realized he would never ordain me. We did not even discuss my own ordination process. It was if it had never happened, though I had given my whole fucking heart and soul to the cause for years. My father passed in the midst of all of this. I came out to him on his deathbed. He shed a single tear. I cannot say for sure, but what I felt was love and acceptance, some sort of understanding between the two of us. I did not feel any kind of judgment, and in the end, perhaps even the most fundamental of us realized that God is love, and that is the most fundamental truth of it all. The rest of my family did not share his enlightenment. I was not particularly shocked, but it did add to the shards of my broken heart. I was about to graduate my massage therapy program and had plans to move west. I wanted a fresh start to explore my true identity. So again, as any good Enneagram 5, I researched where I could go to find the most lesbians in the city. Portland, Oregon it was. So for the remaining months in my hometown, I did the unthinkable. And I found a liberal church, no words minced, to attend. Hell, what did I have to lose? After talking with the pastor, I thought I would head out west, attend another affirming church there we had already scouted out, and enter my last ordination process. You have probably guessed it did not go as planned. Portland is still one of my favorite cities. I have the state of Oregon tattooed on my body. The truth is that grief took a toll on me. Losing my church, chosen and biological family, all because I dared to remove my disguise and show them who I really am, left me very raw and lonely. Then my mother also got sick on top of everything. So I headed back east after only a few months. When I got back, it was time to drop the disguise and come out to the pastor and his wife, both of whom had literally left a whole denomination over the kind of person I was. All of the questions were there, and whilst fair enough, none for my own good, most for their own outrage. It seemed to me, all in a moment, their love had turned to utter disdain. I had gone through my confirmation with them. They were my godparents. Our relationship had been strained, but truly losing this chosen family was brutal. I returned to that affirming church where I would meet my wife. It was nothing I had been so raised to fear. If this was all my history had told me was evil, sign me up for a fucking pitchfork. It was an amazing season of acceptance and affirmation. The pastor and the congregation showed me the love of the church could be boundless when it holds no judgment. I had quite the experience one morning. It was the season of light, Epiphany, and I was about to have one. I went in early, as was my habit, to meditate silently. The church was draped in blue for the season. I could faintly smell incense and old church must. As I pulled the kneeling bench down, I heard the creaking of the wooden pew and the squeak of the leather as my knees hit it. My arms hung over the front of the pew, and my eyes were closed as I focused on my breath. In and out, slowly. In the stillness I heard, "Grace, you're not going to hell." Maybe it was God. Maybe I simply heard my own voice instead of everyone else's around me for the first time. Either way, I was changed forever by that light. Unfortunately, this beautiful church belonged to the same denomination as the Cool Kid Coffee House Church. I attended their annual church-wide assembly, where representatives from churches all throughout the denomination gather to do the business of the church. They hear the leadership reports and vote on all its newest policies, procedures, and programs. There are presentations of inspirational stories of its work around the globe from the previous year. This year, when I and my then girlfriend, now wife, attended with our pastor, I would endure yet another split in real time over LGBTQIA plus ordination in yet another denomination. One man stood up and compared LGBTQIA plus persons to dog shit in a pan of brownies. What loving parent, much less God the Father, would allow their children that brownie? There were many breakout sessions. I even shared tearfully about the painful process this had been in my previous denomination. I am so grateful this time to have had the love and support of my pastor, to see compassion in her eyes and not repulsion. During a break outside, the pastor of the cool kid church walked up on me. Apparently, he has a knack for catching me off guard. He tried to convince me how wrong my church was, thinking me only an ally. So I came out to him personally. It was my turn to catch him off guard. He immediately stopped trying to fight for me and looked at me like a lost cause. He walked away, and I have never seen him since. At last, at the end of the week, the big vote came. And finally, this time, the denomination stood on the right side of history as a progressive light in the Christian church at large for humanity. It did do some healing for my soul, but the path to get there was gut-wrenching. Obviously, I did not end up going through with ordination with this church. But wait, don't shut me off quite yet. We are going to bring this flashback to the present, and we will resolve that cliffhanger next time. Remember that vision of a ring with all my Renaissance woman loves inside? As I have continued to explore calling with my coach, Zoe, it came up in a session. I really knew that the vision in that meditation was meaningful, even all these years later. I had never forgotten it, and I frequently pondered what in the hell it meant. She walked me through as I asked myself about my own interpretation. We all tend to lean on what we know. I almost think that is our disguise, and sometimes we do not even know we are wearing one. I think that is exactly what I did. But since I knew it was real, I wanted to know, what does it mean now? My coach held an expansive space with me, rushing nothing along, allowing me the wide berth I needed to understand, just as I had so wanted before, even beyond belief, to understand. I remember I began to smile as I had my eyes closed, listening and breathing. I saw a horse corral. They are wide open rings with lots of space for air to pass and a gate to enter and exit freely. They're full of soft ground upon which to fall and a lead for when you need to steady your course. You can put hurdles in to jump or barrels to race. You can also remove all of it for that open space to trot or gallop, nap, or just roll around on that soft ground. All of my Renaissance woman loves can enter and exit this breathable space according to whatever the moment may call for. Since I was 13, with that original calling in my soul, I have wanted a peaceful retreat of sorts for people to come and rest, receive healing and restoration. I wanted it to be accessible and affordable. I always dreamed it would be a little farm of sorts. Nothing fancy, just an expansive space that would give folks a wide berth for whatever they need or want to call into their lives, just like I was getting in this session. Strides towards this dreamy calling are already being made. This vision has come full circle. With all of the anti-queer hate, especially toward our beloved, two-spirited, non-binary, and trans family, we need safe spaces now more than ever. I wish that what I have shared here was a far distant truth. Sadly, it is not, and many are doubling down on what is truly evil rhetoric against people who are literally fighting for love and for their lives. It is important, very literally and spiritually, that we walk each other home, as Ram Dass said, and that we find our safety in each other, as Kalyagni illustrates. Until next time, cheers, allies and queers. Special thanks to ally and proud daughter of a great gay dad, Dr. Zoë Lumiere. I'll link her information in the show notes and highlight her on social media. as this series, which the work I've done with her has so impacted, rolls out the rest of the way. What a way to live this year, allowing love to guide you. I'll also link the art of non-binary Black artist Kai Young Mi. Go buy their stuff. Visit mediocremystic.com for all the social links, blog, and contact, also linked in the show notes. If you're feeling the spirit move you to a love offering, go subscribe, follow, rate, and review Mediocre Mystic on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or any of the platforms you find your podcasts. You can chip in to support the show and keep it independent for less than the price of a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/mediocremyg. That's mediocre my G. Thanks to 86 Aerostar for my groovy mood music and Bizry Creative Group for my mesmerizing logo.